Good afternoon. This is a work session for the City of Largo for Tuesday, July 14th. I'd like to call this meeting to order and welcome all of our commission that's here today with us and staff and everybody. So we're going to start with a business spotlight. And the business that we're going to spotlight today is Elmcroft of Pinellas. I'm waiting to see Miss Sue Osborne come up. And there her name is, so that's good.
She's in. She's right there. Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor. Today's special business spotlight will provide insight to the City Commission and community on the unique challenges that senior living facilities are facing during the COVID-19 pandemic. I'd like to welcome Ms. Sue Osborne, Director of Business Development, representing Elmcroft of Pinecrest. She's been with the senior living community for 10 years. Thank you so much for joining us, Sue. I appreciate your time. Let me tell you a little bit about Elmcroft of Pinecrest, and then I'll let Ms. Osborne tell you more about her organization. This senior living community has been part of the Largo community since 1987. The beautiful 9-acre community is located at 1150 8th Avenue Southwest, which is just north of John S. Taylor Park. And it's adjacent to the Pinellas Trail. So this senior living community offers a lifestyle of comfort, convenience, and engagement for individuals that seek independent living and assisted living in a facility with many resort-style amenities. This organization has been a longtime supporter of Largo, including supporting the Central Pinellas Chamber of Commerce, the Suncoast Performing Arts Foundation, and other charities. The residents there enjoy living in Largo and participate in the community by mentoring elementary school students, collecting school supplies, sponsoring a child during holidays, and supporting food drives and other charities. So we've invited Ms. Osborne today to discuss some of the lessons learned during the pandemic and how her organization has adapted to a new normal. So thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about your business?
Good afternoon. Thanks so much for having us. Pinecrest offers the ultimate in retirement living in Pinellas County and probably all of Florida, if you ask me. We have 424 apartments, and in these apartments are included the license to care for 120 people with a standard assisted living license. So we have 314 independent living apartments, and that's like living on the Love Boat. It's apartments with benefits, and none of them are medical. We have 67 apartments or shared apartments for assisted living, and we have 43 private studios for memory care. We average normally between 89 and 90% full all the time. It's a huge property. They don't build them this big anymore because it's not easy. But right now we're about 86 because we don't have a lot of move-ins today for obvious reasons. And our average age is also 86. So we have several different floor plans. We have a limited number of studios, which are around 400 square feet. Then we have 600, 800, and 1,000 square foot, 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartments. Meals are included in their rent cost. So the independent people get 2 meals a day. The assisted living and memory care get all 3 meals every day. We have activities galore. Normally, of course, we have around 300 things for them to do every month. Most of it's legal, by the way, just so you don't worry about that. I'm not sure about the horse racing part and maybe the bingo, but anyway, most of it is good. But right now we're restricted. And so one of the things that has been the most challenging for us is keeping these people engaged, because that's one of the big reasons why they chose to live with us in the beginning, is because they had friends and camaraderie and people caring for them and so forth. And we have about 187 employees that help us take care of these people. And right now, up until last Friday, everybody, residents, staff, everybody was all negative, but we had one positive case, totally asymptomatic, from a caregiver. So she's, of course, on leave for 2 weeks until she gets her tests back and she's negative again. We've hired a company to come in and clean everything. So we went 3.5 months without anything. But, you know, the more they open up things, the more the caregivers are going out and doing things that maybe they wouldn't have done earlier in the stage of this thing. So we're battling that. And one of the things that we're most proud of is the tenure of our staff, because Karen, our executive director, Karen McFarland's been there for 17 years. That's unheard of in this business. And as Carissa said, I've been there for 10 years. We have other people who have been there for 10, 15, you name it. We've been around a long time. And that speaks a lot to the leadership that we have there. What have we learned from the pandemic? We learned it's really hard to keep 400 people happy when they can't do what they normally can do. And we've learned to accomplish things in a new way. We have an in-house TV channel. And so we used to play music, you know, that it was a radio channel, and then we would put up slides of the menu and all the activities for the day and all of that stuff. But now we've learned to use it to play virtual bingo and exercise, and we film our residents who have talents. They play the piano or they play the banjo or they do art lessons or whatever. We're filming them and putting those classes or that entertainment on our in-house TV channel. We have a cooking show that our chef does for them. So there's a lot of things that we've learned to do because of this that we didn't know we could do before, but you learn to do what you've got to do, you know?
Okay.
And we've learned to, go ahead, Krista.
Oh, I was just going to say kudos to your organization. It just sounds like you all are continuing to provide these really, truly life-enriching activities and using technology. And it sounds like the residents have adapted. And I'm very excited to hear that you've been successful in this. What are the challenges that you have so far?
One of our biggest challenges is in dining, because of course they're used to coming down and having restaurant style and having like 5 choices for dinner. And we've closed our dining room. We closed our dining room right away. Because it's really difficult to keep that many people 6 feet apart. I mean, I don't even know how you would do it in there. So they are getting basically room service or apartment service, whatever you want to call it. So we're delivering their meals in independent 2 meals a day, and in the other areas 3 meals a day. Plus they get a surprise snack every afternoon. They get real excited over a creamsicle or something like that. And the biggest thing that they wait for is the happy hour wagon every Friday afternoon, which goes up and down the halls. So that's one thing that they would probably revolt if we stopped that. So, of course, and covering the cost of doing this is not cheap, because now everybody has to have all the PPE. But then again, we haven't used a real dish or a real fork or knife or glass or anything for, going on 4 months now. So we have to build the cost of providing all that stuff and then throwing it away because they're afraid they're not going to wash it right, or they don't want to have anybody handling that and then passing it on. And so it's all disposable. So the cost of doing those things is definitely a challenge. And in the beginning, by the way, when we were having difficulty providing all this stuff, the county stepped up and helped us get some of the PPE, and we really appreciate that assistance. Other challenges are the sales department, of course, is challenged with moving people in all the time. And we have such a large population with, almost 500 people living there, and they're older people, and unfortunately, they pass away. When they pass away, we have to have somebody to take that spot, or we try to fill it up, because that's our job. We can't do that. We can't have people come in for a tour. People call up and they can't come over and see it. And then what are you going to do? So we've learned to do virtual tours. So we take them around with an iPhone or an iPad or whatever we have, whatever their device matches up to us, and we show them around the community. And we are moving people in, and that's another challenge, because how do you let people come in when you don't know where their stuff's been? You don't know where they've been. So they have to be in quarantine when they move in, and now they have to have a negative test before they can move in. We've chosen one mover, and that mover we know who tests all of his employees, and he has the right PPE. And so he only moves people in after 6:30 at night when everybody is in their apartment. So he can't have any contact with any residents who are already there. So it gets really complicated, and we're not getting a kickback from this mover. Everybody says, oh, you're making us move this move. So it's between him and them, what he's going to charge them for the move. We don't get anything out of it just because we chose him, but we trust him. But, they're frugal. Let's put it that way. Other challenges. Some other retirement communities are not being as strict as Karen is being. So they hear from their friends who live someplace else that they're still eating in their dining room. Well, they can't. Or they're still letting their residents go drive around. Well, the minute you let them get in their car and go somewhere, where do you know where they've been? So we're not letting anybody drive. If they have to go out somewhere, our drivers are taking them to it, and it has to be an emergent appointment or a necessary appointment. They can't just go get their hair done like they used to. So that's a real challenge, is making them understand. But when they realize how many people aren't becoming ill, then they ease up a little bit. So hopefully that's our biggest challenge, and dealing with the families who want to see their family. Well, they can't. They can come over and talk to them through the glass. We've had countless birthday parties. Our residents inside behind the glass, and they're in the parking lot and they're having a cake, and we have a cake inside, they have a cake outside. It's all great.
So maintaining that social distancing is so important, but at the same time, continuing those relationships and finding ways to help them make the connection. So I'm very, again, kudos to you and congratulations for keeping that extremely low infection rate in comparison to so many other facilities. What can Largo do for you? What can Largo do for Elmcroft?
I think just be supportive to the fact that it's going to be harder on senior living communities and nursing homes and so forth, because they have different rules from the state. We have the vulnerable population aspect. So when everybody else thinks that they're moving to phase one, well, we're not. We're not in phase. We won't be in phase one until probably you guys are in phase three or four, because they're just, a lot of them have weakened immune systems. And one thing that I know Karen keeps her up at night is worrying about our residents getting sick, having to go to the hospital, and then passing away by themselves. That would break her heart, because it's hard enough, if they're with us, at least we have caregivers that are allowed to go see them, and they're not alone with strangers. And I know that the medical staffs are doing everything they possibly can, but it's not the same as being there with a family member or being there with somebody who's been taking care of you for years. So she worries about that, and that's, I think, one of her driving things is to keep everybody as safe as we can, so we keep them from having to go that route.
Well, thank you, Sue, for all the hard work that you all have been doing, and really just working so hard to keep everyone's spirits up in your community. And we appreciate everything that you all have done. Do the city commissioners have any questions at this time?
Any questions? Well, thank you for joining us, Sue, and thank you for the update. Commissioner Holmes has a question.
Hey, Sue, just curiosity, what's the high and low on the rent? What's the least expensive and the most expensive?
I'm going to say that
he's going to be there soon, is what he's saying.
Okay. A one-bedroom apartment for one person is $26.60. Starts at. But of course, you get a lot of amenities with that. And the highest would be the highest would probably be, I would say assisted living with the highest care. So you're talking, $3,800 for a shared, which means it's not shared like people think of a hospital room with a curtain in between. This is a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment. And somebody has one bedroom and 1 bath, and the other person has the other half, and then they share the middle. So that's around 35, 36 plus 1,800 would be for the care. And that would be the max care. The least care is 400. So that's your range there. And memory care is 50 $375, but that includes the care, because the care plan there can change in 24 hours. So it's easier to just say, here's your rent and we'll take care of it.
If someone has one of these nursing home policies that cover custodial care, is your facility considered a licensed facility for most of those insurance policies?
There's several things. You can't use it for independent living because you don't need any help, right?
Right.
In assisted living, one of the big requirements that a lot of the policies have is that you have a nurse, an LPN or an RN 24 hours a day. So you have to make sure when you're looking at your policy, if it says that, you have to go someplace that has that, and we do. But some people don't ask that question, and then after they move into a place that doesn't have nurses 24 hours a day, then they find out their policy requires it, and the policy won't pay.
That's right. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else?
Mr. Smith.
So I just want to say, every year your tree display, your Christmas tree display is awesome. And
we're worried about that.
Yeah, hopefully they get to see that this year. And
we'll do it for the residents, and because they can come down and walk around. They just can't sit in the lobby,
Yeah.
It looks like a crime scene because we have caution tape all over the place just to remind them that they're not allowed to do that.
Okay.
But they're all wearing masks and everything, so.
And anything like with our library can help with your residents, please reach out to me. Our library does a lot.
I don't know if the bookmobile is still coming, but it used to.
Okay. I'll reach out to Casey.
Mail a ton of stuff back to you, audio books and stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
All right, have a good evening.
Well, thank you, Sue.
Great rest of the meeting, guys.
I wanted to add that I was happy to hear that the happy hour is still going on, even though it's just a cart going down the hallway, because I know that was extremely popular.
Let me tell you, a lot of them have found out that Lukens delivers.
Well, I understood.
Thank you,
thank you for being here.
The front door. Yeah.
We're going to be moving on. Oh,
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
thank you. We're going to move on to the Pinellas Mid-County Gateway Area Master Plan update. And for that, we have the Executive Director of Forward Pinellas with us, Mr. Whit Blanton. So take it away, Whit.
All right, good afternoon. Thank you for having me, Mayor, Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be back with you today. I'm going to be asking Christina Mendoza of our staff to give the presentation, but I do want to just set this up a little bit. With your assistance financially a little more than a year and a half ago, we undertook probably the largest multi-jurisdictional planning effort in Pinellas County with the Gateway Mid-County Master Plan. This is one of three key spotlight emphasis areas that our board adopted in 2015, along with enhancing beach community access and a vision for the US 19 corridor. And Gateway is just such an important part of Pinellas County from an economic development strategy. It's a coastal high hazard area in terms of how that boundary line has been recently drawn. It's got the airport, it's got our highest wage jobs in the county. So there's a lot happening there, and Largo takes up a big portion of our study area. And your staff has been excellent to work with throughout this entire master planning process, giving us some really good feedback and really good input as we develop the plan. The status of the plan right now is that we've completed the master plan. We are currently incorporating some of the final comments that we've received on the master plan. But you're at a pivotal time right now where, great, the plan is done. Now what are we going to do with it? And a lot of times those plans end up being something that sits on a shelf and, oh, that was nice, but we're really not working that plan or implementing the plan. And I went through a similar process in Charleston, South Carolina, where we worked with multi-jurisdictional partners in the county, the two cities, the port, and others, to put together an implementing framework that held everybody's set of responsibilities through a period of getting the plan off the shelf and really into the hands of people who own land, people who live in the community, the public agencies that actually put together a capital improvements program and work on their land development codes. And the vehicle we chose for that in Charleston was a memorandum of understanding. which did not commit any of the local governments to adopting everything in the plan, because it's a guiding plan. It's not a regulating plan. It's not your comprehensive plan, for instance. But what the MOU did for that Charleston area is that it committed all the partners to a set of guiding principles. And that's what we've done here. We followed that process. So the guiding principles, Christina will talk a little bit about those, are really what we're asking you to help us achieve. And you're our first presentation. We have a meeting, I think, on Thursday with the City of St. Pete. And then we're scheduling presentations with Pinellas County and with Pinellas Park to have them go through the same process. And Christina Mendoza of our staff will be responsible for the implementation activities, really bringing people together at a staff level, and then every couple of years bringing the elected officials of Pinellas County together to talk about what they've been able to achieve and accomplish in furthering those guiding principles for the master plan. And again, our job at Ford Pinellas is not to tell you what to do, but is to work with you, to bring you along and have you tell us what you're able to work on and able to achieve as part of those guiding principles. So it's really a menu for you. And it's for you to kind of look at that menu and say, yeah, we can do some of that. We can do a little of this. And honestly, your Tri-City plan is a big part of that implementation strategy. So if you're committed to achieving your Tri-City plan, you know, we're right there with you, and anything that you need from us that we can help, we're going to do that. One last point is Commissioner Smith can attest, last week, the Ford Pinellas Board just approved a new set of transportation project prioritization criteria, and we've included the Gateway Master Plan in that. So local governments that work with us on implementing the Gateway Master Plan will get a little higher preference for transportation projects that serve the Gateway area. So that was a big part of what we wanted our board to commit to doing as well. And this will be adopted by our board as well, but we're going to wait until after the 4 local government partners do their thing. And we hope that happens sometime later this year. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Christina, and I'll be happy to answer any questions after she's finished.
Okay, thanks, Whit. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you all. Okay, can you see it okay? Good, okay. All right, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today. As Whit just mentioned, my name is Christina Mendoza, and today I'm going to provide you with just a brief update on the status of the Gateway Master Plan. And before we get started, I just wanted to just take a second to respectfully request that you keep all questions and comments to the end of the presentation. It's very short, so we just want to get through it as quickly as possible. So with that, I'll begin. So since the Commission has already seen several presentations on the plan, today I'm going to focus on the plan's recommendations, the overall project status, and then the implementation next steps. So the plan identified a need for improved access and mobility within the Gateway area through a connected transportation network that takes into account all modes. It also recognized the need to recognize the relationship between the transportation network and adjacent land uses. The plan also identified the need for the incorporation of mixed-use live, work, and employment districts that incorporate housing, amenities, employment opportunities that leverage transit with pedestrian access and create a sense of place. The plan also identified the need for the incorporation of multimodal connections that balance both safety and accessibility in the Gateway area. It also identified the need to address vulnerabilities within the county, as it will be increasingly subject to the effects of climate change and sea level rise. So there really needs to be a heightened emphasis on sustainability and resiliency. Other needs identified in the plan include the need to create an environment that fosters job retention and job growth, and the need to incorporate public realm improvements that can enhance the built environment. So as we just mentioned, currently the plan is complete. We are incorporating the comments that we've received from the local governments. We've also drafted a memorandum of understanding for the partners to adopt. The memorandum of understanding is basically meant to document the commitment between the parties to make the changes necessary to implement the Gateway Master Plan. And we're hoping for local adoption of the MOU by fall of 2020. Now we're moving toward implementation of the plan. We've updated the website. We're going to develop performance measures for implementation. And we're also hoping to develop a reporting structure to track this information. So the partners will be adopting the MOU as part of the implementation process. And to clarify, the local governments are not being asked to adopt all of the action items in the plan. They're being asked to support the planning and design guiding principles identified in the plan through implementation actions. And just to provide a brief overview of those guiding principles, they include a sustainable and resilient gateway, a connected gateway, a vibrant gateway, an economically robust gateway, a gateway with a variety of safe, healthy, and affordable neighborhoods, an equitable gateway that incorporates health in all policies and considers most vulnerable users, and a smarter, more innovative gateway. So I'm going to just provide a brief overview of some of the key recommendations identified in the MOU. And I also did want to clarify that the MOU is between the local governments and Forward Pinellas. It does not include FDOT or PSTA. So essentially, the MOU is going to establish a gateway partnership, which will consist of members from the study management team. It will establish their responsibilities and membership. It also establishes Forward Pinellas as the conduit to engage partners and coordinate meetings. It commits the parties to ensuring that the Gateway Master Plan is considered at all levels of local government structure during the amendment of relevant plans, the prioritization of projects, and the development of affordable housing strategies for the Gateway area. It also commits the parties to working together to ensure that there is no net loss of employment potential in the Gateway, while using land more efficiently to broaden a mix of uses, and that includes reducing the amount of land that's currently devoted to surface parking. It also commits the parties to practicing inclusive planning that takes into account the needs of all existing neighborhoods and communities at all economic levels, to working with the private sector to develop sub-areas, and to engaging the landowners of catalyst sites identified in the Gateway Master Plan. And it also commits Forward Pinellas to developing a monitoring system for progress, convening meetings and maintaining the website, and the Gateway Partnership to establishing a reporting and collaboration structure for implementation actions. So next steps include finalizing the Gateway Master Plan and MOU and adoption of the plan and MOU. And then we're going to be shifting to developing performance measures for the partners to use to measure their progress toward implementation. Sometime in the next few months, September or October of this year, we're going to be scheduling another Gateway Partnership meeting to discuss and brainstorm performance measures that would be appropriate for each jurisdiction to consider. And we're also going to be discussing a reporting structure that we can use to track the implementation progress. And we'd like to incorporate that reporting structure into the Gateway website. So that's all I have for today. I will take any questions you may have. Let me stop sharing my screen. There we go.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question, Mayor.
Sure, Mr. Karen.
Christina, when you think the time is right, or WIT, I don't know if you plan on making this presentation to the Suncoast League of Cities. Have you considered that?
We certainly can.
The reason I ask that is a lot of the member municipalities aren't really connected to this project, but the city of Seminole, Clearwater, the Bel Airs, and so forth will certainly be affected by it. And as we go forward into the legislative session, we're looking for good examples of multi-jurisdictional or regional cooperative efforts, and this might be a good example of that. So Commissioner Robinson is the second vice president now of the Suncoast League. So perhaps at some point we could get you on the agenda for a Suncoast. It'll be a virtual meeting, I'm sure.
Okay,
Great.
certainly.
Yeah, we can definitely work that out. I'll be glad to work with you, Whit, and Commissioner Smith and Christina. We can figure it out for sure.
Sounds great.
Any other questions? Commissioner Holmes.
Christina and Whit, both of you, either. I've often wondered, isn't 275 Howard Franklin Bridge part of this?
Yes, it is. I mean, it's a key access
Okay.
route leading into and out of the gateway.
Okay, what I've often wondered is why is it that Pinellas County is in high gear getting the overpasses, the toll roads, and I mean all of our infrastructure done, and yet FDOT has barely started the Howard Franklin Bridge, and that's going to take years. So we're going to be done here 2 years before that bridge gets done. So you're going to have a period of time there that apparently we're going to be able to funnel more traffic onto 275 quicker. And the whole idea behind this thing was to mitigate the problem of the traffic between Pinellas and Hillsborough County. And I've often wondered, was this a planning, mix up or what?
Well, I mean, I think with transportation, there's always a time lag to get projects fully funded. The Howard Franklin Bridge is under construction. It'll take about 3 years. The I-275 modernization south of where 4th Street comes into the Howard Franklin Bridge down to downtown St. Petersburg is also funded for 2024-25 in the 5-year work program. So you're going to see construction on I-275 for quite a few years. In fact, the West Shore interchange over in Hillsborough County is funded for construction, and that'll take place over about a 3-year period beginning in 2024. So I-275 is going to be under construction for the next 7-8 years. The Gateway Master Plan provides a foundation to guide responsible growth into that area and provide the local street connections that reduce the dependence on the state highway system. Right now, if you want to go a few blocks, you got to get on Ulmerton Road, or you got to get on another major state highway. If we had a little bit better street connectivity, which we're working on, that would reduce some of the dependence of the state highway system. An example of that is the county road just south of Ulmerton Road that we're trying to connect between 34th Street and 49th Street. If you make a connection there, then some of that truck traffic doesn't have to all go to Ulmerton Road. So as those connections get done, we'll complement the state investments. But there's never a great perfect sync between all your transportation projects and your local land development projects. It's just, there's too many moving parts.
All right, the last question, 275 at West Shore, when is that bottleneck theoretically going to be mitigated?
So
the northbound 275 at West Shore.
That's actually happening this fiscal year.
Right.
So what DOT is, they're adding 2 lanes in each direction as sort of a punch through so that you don't go from 4 lanes down to 2 lanes going through under that. What I was referring to earlier is the complete reconstruction of the State Road 60 275 interchange, and that's a few years out. But the punch through on I-275 itself, that's in FY21. So starting in July, that'll be underway.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner Smith.
Probably for Carol. I know that in our next year's budget, we have $35,000 for consulting to this project also. Am I correct?
Yes, we've proposed additional services through the Tri-City Special Area Plan, but it would also relate to implementation of this project.
And your thoughts of the partnership that you've had with WIT and Forward Pinellas with your staff? How's that?
It's been a great experience because one of the things that Forward Pinellas does very well is convene. And we have been in very intense workshops and charrettes with the staff from St. Pete and Pinellas Park and unincorporated Pinellas County, and had just really great communication. So, we think that this partnership's had its intended effect in forging those working relationships.
Okay, and probably a question for Christine. The membership, who will lead that? Is it electeds or staff that was on the MOU?
The Gateway Partnership membership?
Correct. Will that be led by staff or electeds?
Yes.
Staff?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
What we envision, if I could add real quick to that, we envision 2 layers there. So the staff will be meeting on a more regular basis, quarterly to start. We may not need to meet quarterly. There may be a condition where we need to have an emergency meeting. That's going to be more ad hoc. What we do envision, though, is every 2 years at least, is convening the elected officials in Pinellas County around these larger countywide issues and make the Gateway Master Plan a standing item. So let's say we meet in 2021 on the countywide affordable housing strategy, which is something that we're working on in partnership with Pinellas County and the city of Largo and others. We would meet on the affordable housing strategy, but then we would have the Gateway Master Plan as a standing item for that same day. And all the elected officials in Pinellas County would be invited to that, kind of like we've done in the last several years for our economic development summits. You may remember those.
And one other thing is, have we also maybe included Congressman Christ in what this is and keep his office apprised of everything?
We have briefed him on this, but I'm not sure how much of it stuck. So it probably is a regular communication that we need to have.
Okay.
Particularly as they develop the next transportation bill. The House recently passed its transportation bill. They're now going to have to negotiate with the Senate on the bill that they've passed. But there's a lot of language in there that would be very, very relevant for the Gateway.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, very good. Thank you for being here and thank you for the update.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we'll have a presentation given by Human Resources on the final recommendations for the compensation and classification study.
Okay, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Oh, excellent. Okay. I'm trying to see everybody here, but that's okay. Well, we are so fortunate to have this opportunity to do this compensation and classification study based on the support that you gave us in this FY20 budget that we're experiencing this year. As a reminder, just kind of briefing our history here, we have not done a compensation and classification study in over 25 years with a vendor coming in to the city and looking at our compensation and classification system. So we are so pleased and highly anticipated the results of this study. We've known that the city of Largo, we've been somewhat of a low payer. We haven't been able to keep pace. And so that was a big premise for being able to invest in our employees and be able to attract and retain a competitive workforce. We knew when we would compare with other neighboring entities, we needed to put some resources into where we stood with regards to compensation and classification. We were very fortunate to find PayPoint HR in order to partner with to provide our compensation and classification study and analysis. We worked very closely with them in order to make sure our comparable organizations were just that. We were looking at organizations that were similar to the city of Largo, and with regards to our size, our complexity, and the type of services that we render. We wanted to make sure we were comparing apples to apples with regards to the positions here in the city. We also wanted to position ourselves for the future, to be able to attract and retain, as we mentioned, our resources, because that's what we're built on, is the people that are providing the services to our citizens and being able to move us forward as an organization to be that community of choice in Tampa Bay. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Rick Campbell and Karen Campbell. I believe Rick will be giving our presentation this evening, and he will walk you through the process, the procedure, and the results of our study.
All right. Go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully everyone can see it. Well, thank you everybody for being here and for giving us this opportunity to present the results of the findings. Usually I start off these kind of presentations, really thanking everybody who's involved in the process, because they are the ones that make sure everything stays on track. I mean, that's the biggest thing. But in the case of particularly Susan, Jill, and Donna, they made sure that the process was easy, and smooth transition kind of process, which is good, makes my job easier. But there was also made sure that both from the point of view of that the employees were being fairly represented, but that they were also being, physically responsible. And, I have to also mention, the city manager is certainly key on that aspect as well. So without, further ado, I will just go through the PowerPoint slide, and I've made this presentation several times, so please feel free to ask any questions that you have along the way. So I'm giving you a top level, kind of overview of the project, and then to kind of cover things in a summary fashion. If you have more in-depth questions, again, I'm happy to answer. So just from a timeline perspective, there'll be 7 bullet points to go through. So project approach. First off, one of the key things that Karen and I have found over the years is that for a successful compensation study, first off, you have to have the support of leadership. So that'd be mayor and the commissioners. That really the intention is that the employees of the city of Largo are being paid fairly. If you don't have that as the start of the process, quite honestly, there's no value of going through it, because you're kind of at the end of the day would be kind of pulling the carpet out from under people. But that hasn't been the approach throughout this process. Is again, the support has been there to see this through fruition. So that's a very good and positive statement. And we've been encouraging employees in different sessions to really thank everybody that's here on the call, for their support. So that's the first part. The second part for a study to be successful is that employees are part of it. They know more about what they do on a day-to-day basis than anybody. So having them a part of the process, communicating to us, what they do on a day-to-day basis, makes the study relevant to them. But it's also make sure that everything's being captured fairly, and that's very important. So we met with employees on several different occasions to get their feedback and input on the process, and again the details of their job. So that was kind of the big part of the classification work that's highlighted there in blue. Information on the other side of the screen that highlighted in orange is really the compensation side of things. And I'll cover that in a little bit more detail here in a moment. And the green section is where everything kind of naturally comes together. But for the whole process to work, you have to have both the classification, the input of employees, and the structure of the city kind of in place, in addition to looking at, what is surrounding communities paying for those same positions. Those are two kind of vital components. The second part is looking at the comparators. So there's lots of ways of doing this kind of approach. You can do nationwide surveys. It just really depends on what is most applicable to the organization. For the case of Largo, what was felt that looking at communities in the surrounding area was most germane. You had similar job offerings. So in some cases, in the case of like St. Pete being a little bit larger, they were still considered relevant because you're losing a number of employees, to St. Pete, but you're also gaining. So that's kind of a natural comparator. We ended up sending out external surveys to 20 different comparator organizations. A dozen chose to, respond. You can see kind of the list of who was part of the study. And we got in our field, that's actually a very good response rate. That we make sure that all the different job titles covered, that you had a good and fair representation. The reason why that's important, if you only had 2 or 3, that's really not sufficient, for us to make any kind of recommendations. Because part of PayPoint's responsibility is not only to represent the employees, which is true, but it's also the city management. We're representative of that group, and also taxpayers. So fair pay has to work for kind of all 3 parties. So again, if you just had a couple of respondents, that wouldn't be enough for me to make any kind of recommendations. So we had a very good response rate. The data is relevant and germane. So kind of some of the results that came out of the entire process is one of the big things we saw is kind of the salary scale needed a little bit of tweaking, if you will. Over the course of time, as Susan mentioned, it's been a while since a full-on study has been done. The number of, kind of the assistant directors, kind of their responsibility has, increased over the years. And it's probably more appropriate for them to be classified or grouped along with other members that are part of the executive team. That's where it is kind of just naturally flowed. The second group, senior management, that was kind of split off from, one of the groups previously. And you can see there's 5 in total. And we'll go over in a little bit kind of the better idea of the definitions. The spread between, that means between the minimum and maximum salary, was set consistent at 60% for all the different job titles. So again, this is kind of promoting the idea that all employees are being treated fairly, have the same kind of growth opportunities. That was important. The one group where there's an exception are team members. Those are previously the variable and temporary employees. So there, you didn't quite need the length of the range, if you will, simply because of the nature of the function. Ladders, and that's distance between grades, was set constant at 7.5%. Again, we have one exception, and that is between the first levels of executive management. What was decided, there was at one point a gap between different levels, so we decided to consolidate things, and that kind of led to naturally a larger gap. And at the end of the day, it also, once you look at the salary schedule, it kind of makes sense where it's placed. So as I mentioned, 5 different categories is what is part of the recommendation. And the reason why this is also important for not only you to understand, but also employees, is kind of differentiates jobs and how people fit into place. It's not a random kind of grouping. There's kind of well-defined groupings or classifications, if you will. So as mentioned, the executive management, they're providing kind of overall leadership of the city under the auspices of the city manager. So you can, you look at what a person does, that makes sense. Those are executive management. Senior managers, they're managing larger functions or divisions with individual departments. Case in point, there's there are certain titles that are, right now classified as being division heads. Again, makes sense. The bottom group there, team members, again, as I mentioned, those are the temporary or short-term positions with the ability to return on an annual basis. And one thing I should, since I'm mentioning the team members group that I like to point out. All these different classifications are important for the city to run well. If you don't have one, there's some portion that the city's not going to run well. Case in point, team members is a lot of the the officers that are helping with crossing guards. That's important for a certain segment of the population of Largo. So again, they're equally as vital. The fourth group on the list, professional. They're professional employees, pretty well defined. But what distinguishes a professional from a supervisory position, and those are the last two categories, is one is kind of involved in the process of performance evaluation, hiring, administering corrective action or discipline, and the other one is not. So again, the categories are well defined, and so now employees can have a better understanding that they're less on the function or the nature of the job, but it's kind of clear-cut divisions, if you will. So there's one consequence. From that, different salary scales as part of this study was created. The salary scales came about from essentially three different factors, if you will. So one was, the internal equity and the overall structure, and that's important. So we wanted to make sure that, the reporting relationships and all that still made sense and was logical. So that was the first leg of the stool, if you will, and it's a three-legged stool. The second part is looking at knowledge, skills, and abilities. Did it make sense that, based on the requirements of the job, again, and the functions of the job, and trying to compare that across, different departments and grouping them like versus like, if you will. So that's the second leg of the stool. And the third, one of the big pushes of the study was external competitiveness. And that, for the most part, set the ranges on salary. So you can see over the next couple of slides, the salary ranges, as I mentioned, 60% wide, that's uniformly across the board, with the one exception between grades X01, executive management level 1, and executive management 2. And when you see the job titles, it'll be clear that division. You'll see here on the next slide, the professional scale and the team member scale. As mentioned before, internal equity. So the next part of the process, once you've come up with, a salary scale that makes, that's equitable from an external competitiveness perspective, then you have to kind of place people in the different, buckets or different grades, if you will. So the first one here you see from executive management, a lot of the assistant, directors are now part of, like I said, made sense based on their responsibility. They're really function as executive manager, and they, for the most part, are in that X01. Then there's a gap in pay that, a little bit between the deputy fire chief, deputy police chief, and a number of the directors. Again, as I mentioned, it made sense where there's a little bit higher gap there. But their responsibilities and their function in the overall direction of the organization under the, again, under the city manager, it makes sense, the titles that are here. Same way with senior managers. The level of responsibilities, whether in charge of a division, like the division fire chief or the police major, or some of the, different level manager. One thing to notice that just because you have the name manager does not necessarily indicate that you're a senior manager. Case in point, the park superintendent has a title superintendent, but the nature of the function of the job makes sense that they're in that grade. Supervisory, there's a large number of employees, again, with different titles that are supervisors. They're still, the function of the job is professional in nature, but they do have the responsibilities of, in the hiring process, firing process, and, performance evaluation, the whole 9 yards. So again, made sense to group them kind of together. The professional employees, it's going to be over a couple screenshots here, but those are the, again, still very valuable employees, but they don't have the supervisory responsibility as part of their job. And again, there's the second screenshot of those different job titles. And then the last group, team members. And you can see these are, again, the variable and temporary employees. As I mentioned, school crossing guards. They were heavily involved in the process during, briefing sessions and focus groups. They wanted to have their voices heard, and they were. They're equally valuable part of the workforce at the city of Largo. And, I know in just, speaking with a number of different people, they are valued, even though, sometimes, unfortunately, they haven't been, considered. But I appreciate them. And I think a number of people certainly that I've run across do. So some of the recommendations, one of the things that was important, and this is part of being, fiscally responsible, is taking into consideration, the current, budget realities that communities across the country are facing. So with having that, in mind, a certain procedure was recommended at the end of the day, and it's changed. I think there was a different goal when the project started, certainly, for being, more competitive, if you will, in terms of compensation. But at the end, and one thing that, I've learned over the years, and having dealt with, employees from the, the Great Recession of 2007 and 2008, one thing you always need to do is make sure you believe that employees are smart, because they are. They understand, the situation that's going on. That doesn't mean that they don't want to be paid fairly, but they also understand, fiscal realities with very high unemployment. That speaks actually really well of the city, the mayor, and the commission, that to continue on with this process, again, to do the best they can. And though it may not be, all that they wanted, it's still a very good and positive step that's being undertaken. So for the placement policy, what was recommended is, once we established where the grades for all employees were, we positioned everybody at the beginning of the grade, at the minimum. And then we advanced them based on the years of tenure. So it was, 5% basically for each year of service in the position itself. So there's a number of employees that have had many job titles over their career with the city. And unfortunately, or for the way it was considered is, again, based on their current position today. Increases were capped at the grade midpoint, so that, again, this is part of the being, fiscally responsible. Ideally, they might have been placed higher, but again, we did what we could within kind of budget constraints to be as fair as possible. For employees where they are being paid higher than the midpoint, that was fine. There's no recommendation anywhere for a salary decrease, because, once you do that, typically people walk, that even in this environment. The objective, again, is fair pay. So that was the third caveat. So having done that, and kind of the salary recommendations or implications here are, I want to say, are isolated a little bit. And I'm using that kind of language because as part of the budget recommendations that's outside of my purview, there's the cost of living adjustment. So what is common, and I had a call a few days ago where another community is doing the exact same thing that Largo is recommending, is that kind of taking into account the cost of living adjustment and the salary recommendations, kind of combining them in one to try to, again, be mindful and respectful of the taxpayers, but also respectful for employees and trying to get them to be where they need to be financially, so that their wages are competitive with surrounding communities. So having said that, there are 7 positions that we found that currently are below the minimum of the new grade system, which is a very small number considering the number of job titles. The amount to bring them up to minimum is $36,000, very manageable amount. There are 13 positions that, as a result of this study, are experiencing compression. Compression is a fancy way of saying if you consider their length of service and time, where would they kind of naturally be on the salary scale? Some titles kind of were compressed a little bit below where they should be, honestly. But the amount was not, egregious, and that's a good and positive thing. And the cost to make that kind of adjustment would be about under $35,000. The fourth bullet item there, we did find a number of job titles that are below market or substantially below market, and the definition for that would be more than 10% below market. So the fourth recommendation is to raise the salary of those 55 positions at a cost of $287,000. And then the last bucket there is the positions that are just below market. So that's between 5 and 10%. That covered 33 positions, and to make those adjustments for a cost of $162,449. So the external market comparison, we talked a lot about that. Kind of one of the goals, and this is, in my mind, doing it a little bit different in terms of order, but that's okay. So how were the numbers arrived at? The salary amounts. We looked at surrounding communities, the ones that are listed are part of the study, and the goal was to be for the midpoint of the grade to be close to the 50th percentile. That's the fancy math. In reality, what it means is that half the organizations pay less and half pay more. So you're trying to design a system so that for job titles overall, so from top to bottom kind of thing, that you're competitive with surrounding communities, and the definition of competitive would be, again, half below, half above. As an example, here what we have in the report is each and every job title was covered and analyzed. So at the top part of the screen, there is the current, and we'll use the assistant city manager. Their current grade is they're on grade A. The minimum and maximum of their current salary range there is presented. And then the different market percentiles from the 20th percent to 80th percent is shown. So this is giving not only you, taxpayers and employees, this is what the market looks like. So for instance, if you compared the midpoint of the assistant city manager, they are making a little under 118,000 as the midpoint. And that would place them just under the 35th percentile. So that would be, approximately 3 organizations paid less and 7 more of that title. So you can see a quick math way of comparing things is that term compa ratio there at the bottom. And that's saying that they're approximately 15% below. But beyond the math, you can just line things up and see where pay is for, again, each and every job title. So there's other titles that are right at market, and that's good and fine. Part of this purpose of the study was to understand, where every title is at, including the ones that are below market and at market. It's good information for all participants to have. So in conclusion, there's obviously budget implications to this, and I'm not going to speak out of turn relative to the implementation. The cities, from the briefings that I've had at least, or heard has a very good method of incorporating everything, again, to make things to be fiscally responsible, and also to make sure employees are to the best of everyone's ability to be paid fairly. And again, I certainly want to thank you, Mayor, the City Commission, Susan, Donna, Jill, for all their hard work in this process, and to, quite honestly, make it, in my estimation, a successful project. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Does anybody from the commission have any questions for Mr. Campbell? Commissioner Holmes.
Well, actually, this is a question for Susan and Henry. Have we had a problem with turnover with these 233 employees?
If I may,
Of course.
we have. I mean, is it problematic such that, people are running out the door? No. Have we been losing people to other organizations based on pay? Absolutely. We have. I mean, Rick is absolutely right. We've lost wastewater treatment plant supervision, to St. Pete. And we've, there's different positions that, yes, we have. And we know that we do other things here at the city to try to attract and retain, because we have been a lower payer, within our cadre of comparables. We've got great benefits. We try to, promote the things that we can promote until we could do this study. So it's definitely something that was highly anticipated. Our current employees, we told them we're doing a study. That's something that they had faith in us, and they trusted us that we would do the right thing. So they stay with us. So I think there were a few different levels of reaction to our current pay structure as we had it today.
And let me add on to that. I think one of the issues where we've clearly been seeing over the last few years is in a lot of these professional and managerial positions, we used to have a unwritten policy that we would not hire anyone beyond the midpoint of the pay range based on their, experience and qualifications. And what we found in the last, 2, 3, 4 years, we seem to be hiring farther and farther up into the pay range because the range itself is not competitive. So in many cases, we're starting to hire people at 60, 70, 80% into the pay range, which means that in a relatively short period of time, they're going to be at max pay and then they're going to be frustrated.
In addition to what Henry's saying, we go out 2 and 3 times in order to recruit people as well. So, which isn't a great use of staff time because we get skinny pools of people because there are other people paying more. So it's kind of a combination of absolutely what Henry's saying, what I said previously, and just the amount of resources that we're taking up because we can't get people on the first go around. We go 2 or 3 times.
Well, ordinarily, pay is based upon what the market will bear. And, I was surprised. I don't know how much this study costs, but that's going to be one of my questions. So if you want to get geared up for it. But why would we go out if we're paying what the market will bear, which I assume that's what we're doing when Henry just says we're paying higher up in the beginning pay scale. Well, that's fine. That's what the market's bearing. Yeah. But I was going through in the budget that we talked about the other day. We've got this thing called compensation administration in there. And I was trying to do we got this table, I think it's from his company this afternoon. And I was trying to do a quick comparison about, is it from you?
Yes, Rick and Karen provided us the data, but we did that spreadsheet for you.
Yeah, I know. I didn't have enough time. By the time I got it, I was going to look in this thing from the comparative compensation administration to see, where are we, in the scheme of things here. But unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to do it. My last question, though, these 233 people, aren't all of them entitled to the standard raises that we give everybody on an annual basis?
I'm so glad you said that, Commissioner Holmes, because that is what Rick alluded to, and what we absolutely were going to recommend is we have a 4% raise in the budget for people. So we're applying that first. And if there is additional monies required, then we would pay those additional monies. So when you look at the bottom line that Rick just discussed, that doesn't take into consideration the 4% people are being given. So there is quite a skinny up of that money that's necessary to get us to the point to fulfill the recommendations that you just heard discussed.
All right. How much did this study cost?
Just under 50K.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question, or actually I'll just let Susan kind of run with this because I already know the answer, but I'm sure that as you looked at total compensation, you factored in all the other benefits that Largo provides, like 401 contribution, cost of insurance, and all those things. It's not just a chart of numbers that you put out there with salary, right?
Right. For this particular study, Commissioner, we did solely look at compensation because that was the one comparable in those organizations. We do fall behind on our 401 contribution. We know that. We augmented that just the fiscal year before last. We added 1%, which still is not competitive with others, but we're getting there. Our health benefits are extremely competitive. Just the amount of benefits they get for the premium they pay is completely appreciated by our employees. We ebb and flow a little bit, but we're progressing to be better in each one of those categories.
Yeah, I just wanted to give you the opportunity to say a few of those things like tuition reimbursement, all those other things that we use to attract qualified candidates and then keep good employees. So it's not just, I mean, the numbers are very important, the compensation numbers, but there's some other factors as well. Thank you.
And I must add, we're good people, and there's no price tag on that. So.
Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you very much for the presentation. And as we've discussed several times over the last couple of years, our goal is to attract and retain good quality employees. And this is certainly a good step towards continuing to do that. So thank you for your help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up will be an update on ELMS, which is Enriching Lives Through Mental Health Services.
Can you hear me? Are we on?
You're good, yes.
All right. Good evening, everybody. I'm Officer Soto, and this is Tiana Adet, my partner with Directions for Living. We make up the ELMS team, or the mental health team here at Largo, at the PD, obviously. Just a quick, intro or just a quick introduction to our team here. It was established back in October of 2018. It's a collaborative effort between Directions for Living and Largo PD. And essentially our job here is just to connect people with resources and support that are struggling with mental health in our community. I'm standing a little bit ways from the laptop. Is everybody able to hear me okay?
Let me share the screen.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, excellent. And so basically our job is just to kind of lend support and link up citizens in our community with resources to help them with their mental health issues. We kind of identify the highest utilizers of police services. And then we try to triage who we're able to kind of focus our attention to so that we're eliminating or reducing kind of the police response to some of these mental health issues that really are more social worker issues, more really non-police related issues that tend to get 911 called on. So Tiana and I, we respond to 911 calls. We follow up with clients that have been Baker Acted, that reach out to us through referrals. And essentially, it's trying to find out what they need in order to keep them stable and basically stabilized. With mental health, There is no one size fits all sort of approach or treatment. Everybody's needs are different. And that goes from medicine, therapy, counseling, case management. Sometimes it's housing, sometimes it's nutrition, sometimes it's finances. We really try to get kind of a 360-degree approach on what they need to kind of keep them stable. I could tell you that with Corona, it's kind of put a little bit of a damper, and it's made things a little bit challenging with the unit. A lot of the resources aren't what they were before. A lot of places aren't taking patients like they were. A lot of things have turned to telehealth, just kind of like what we're doing right now. There's some obstacles with technology and people having access to these sort of Zoom meetings that sometimes they don't have the ability to make their appointments. So we're definitely coming across some obstacles like everybody else is during this COVID pandemic. But we're still getting out there and getting some of these, getting some really good help to people. Just a quick overview. Our day just kind of starts off with reviewing reports and referrals. Again, connecting with resources, following up with the clients. We try to respond to 911 calls as we're on and we hear them coming out. And a big part of what we're doing also is connecting and making partnerships with the community. A lot of the clientele that we have don't have insurance. So those sort of resources and support are kind of, the system's overwhelmed. And so if we can kind of think out of the box and find different ways to get these people help, that's kind of a good chunk of our day is spent finding those sort of resources. Just to kind of throw a little bit of data your way, between October and January, we had about 725 encounters. We linked up about 147 clients with services. There's an example there, Mary, just hypothetically, we had one client that had 65 calls for service in 1 year. And once we became involved, we were able to kind of diminish some of that number to 12 so that, again, the patrol is responding less to her mental health needs. The following page here shows that some of the numbers regarding before the unit was established and post, and you can see there was a 81% reduction in calls for service and a 66% reduction in the number of Baker Acts among our highest utilizers, which we kind of identify our top 20. We've got a couple awards. We've been recognized already as a young team. We've received the Community Heroes Award, which is a really nice award to get. Tiana's gotten recognized at Directions for Living. I have here at the police department. Our agency was kind enough to send us off to Madison, Wisconsin to observe their mental health program out there. And we came back just invigorated and just learned a ton from seeing how they operate. So we brought a lot of what they have been doing down here, and it's really helped us out. And please feel free to like jump in and ask a question or anything like that if anything comes up. But just to kind of finish off with just a couple success stories. These are like, I have to say, it'll be 19 years for me, the beginning of 19 years next month. I've done patrol, school resource officer. I'm on the SWAT team. I'm a sniper on the team. I've done community policing, a lot of undercover stuff, a lot of vice stuff. And I have to say this is the most rewarding year of my career with the things that we've been able to do for the clients that we help. It's really something, there's a huge need for people to advocate for some of these people that don't have anybody. And when we show up and they know that we're there to help, we're often greeted with tears. And I can't tell you how many times we've heard, "You're a godsend. No one's ever done this," or "I have nobody." And when we actually get them connected, it's just really something else. Just to share one of the success stories that we had, a couple, actually during the whole Corona thing where we were kind of assigned to the road, one of the patrol officers reached out to me and let me know about a 5-month homeless pregnant heroin addict who was basically in need of services. Our team jumped in, got her connected with services. She was actually on the verge of dying. She didn't realize that she was septic, and spent 56 days in the hospital getting treatment.
For her physical ailment. She had developed endocarditis and an embolism because of her IV drug use. And for 56 days, twice a day, she was hooked up to IV antibiotics, and didn't think she or the baby were going to make it. And she was able to, with the help of our team and the social worker at the hospital, she was discharged with a team for prenatal care, counseling, med management, in an intensive partial hospitalization program, which is for the mental health and the substance abuse.
Yeah, and she's doing wonderful. She looks great. We're just, we've checked on her almost every week while she's been in the hospital, and I don't know, it means a lot because there's hardly any family, especially with hospitals. No one's allowed to go in there, but they allow us as police officers to go in and follow up. So that's always been a really, she's always been very grateful for our involvement. She says we saved her life every time we go in there.
Woody, I got a question for him.
Mr. Combs, go ahead.
Either one of you. Number one, what is if I gather most of these people are destitute or close to it?
For example, the one that we just shared with you right now, she was homeless. Yeah, a large population of the people that we encounter are homeless or.
Okay. Well, fast forward. If they don't have insurance, you can get them Obamacare for nothing. That's a freebie. Anyway, you've got this thing you set up here, 795 encounters. How do you get involved in an encounter? Does someone call you, for example? A regular unit shows up to something and then they say, well, no, this is a mental health deal. And then they call you, or is this a referral from another agency? How do you get involved in these encounters?
So it can be from multiple sources. So we have an internal referral process with the police department. So patrol will be out at a call, and, something's up, the family is saying they need help, or, hey, we've been out to this house, a dozen times. They'll send us a referral internally. We do have individuals that will call us. Patrol will say, hey, this is our mental health team's number. You can give them a call. Our
website's up right now, and I've been getting phone calls from people logging into going to the city website and reaching out to us via that. We also pull reports quarterly, identifying how many people or who's been Baker acted. And when we start to see a trend with someone being Baker acted over and over again, without a referral or without, being asked to go out there, we'll reach out to that person because we're starting to recognize that, they shouldn't be going to the hospital, 3 or 4 times in a 3 or 4 month period. And that's a telltale sign that there needs to be some sort of intervention. But phone calls, I can't. My voice message it's a constant full message box every day. So it's really coming from all kinds of different directions.
Job security. When you go out on a call, last question: are you armed?
Yes, sir. I'm armed. Obviously, Tiana's not, but yes, I'm armed, vest. Yep, just like a regular police officer on patrol.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And no problem. I was just gonna. Well, I guess I can just leave it there. I have another success story that I was going to share. Just this past week. Just this past week, we got 2 people. Both were homeless. One in their 50s, one in their 30s. Both addicted to alcohol, both suffering with mental health issues. Between the both of them, they were Baker acted, 37 times. And I just checked on them today. They're up in a rehab facility, an inpatient place for 90 days. And they're both doing extremely well. They greeted me with hugs. and face masks, but they're just really, they're just very thankful for our involvement. Just today, I got a phone call right before this presentation of someone needing help. They were involved with the Pinellas County Jail Diversion Program. They were released on bond, expected that they would follow up with treatment. He wasn't able to find treatment. He called me up just this morning, and within an hour, I had him logged doing an intake at the facility, and he's getting the help that he needs, a 90-day program. So we're able to really connect people to some of these resources that they just don't know how to get connected to them. So it's really invaluable, I think, what we're doing. And like I said, it's just incredibly rewarding and satisfying on a personal note, I'm blessed to be able to have this position. I really am.
Thank you. Does anybody have any more questions for Officer Soto or Ms. Audette? Commissioner Carroll.
Yeah, it's not really a question. It's just kind of a statement that my hat's off to you guys for what you do. And this is yet another example of the importance of having teams dedicated to certain types of calls so that it's not a different officer each time showing up and starting from scratch. You guys develop a familiarity with people that are using your services, much like the senior services officer or the SRO, homeless outreach folks, stuff like that. And it's also important for us to recognize the fact that this program has been in existence now for 2 years. This is not some program du jour to deal with the current situation nationally, that you've been doing this for a while. You've had some good success, and I really appreciate all you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Smith, did you have something as well?
Yes, to the unit, how has HPO been working with y'all, or do you use it?
We did. I did have a sit down with Merity and Will after one of the meetings, and kind of expressed to them some of the. Actually, you know what? Yes, met with them regarding some of the issues, but then just, I guess, kind of a side note here. I know that we're doing a lot of things with the community and helping support the citizens. One of the things that I try to bring to the attention is that there aren't any supports internally for the police officers. This is a really, really rough time to be a cop right now. Morale is really low just because the temperament of the nation is just, I know we're not PD or Miami or San Francisco or anything like that, but we feel it here on our end, and it takes a toll on all of us. So I know we support the community. One of the things that I brought up in these HBO meetings is that officers are really struggling for services themselves, and that was one of the things that I think came across. So I was thankful to bring that up during the HPO.
Okay. And the a follow-up is to Commissioner Holmes' comment. Can you explain a little bit when you first meet someone, the interaction that you have with them?
It typically, depending on if it's a referral or we're just following up because they just came up on our radar. It's honestly, we'll knock on the door. Depending on the history, a lot of the people that we deal with sometimes are not law enforcement friendly, and sometimes I'll have Tiana kind of take the primary role with the introduction, and I kind of sit in the back, and just basically we just kind of knock on the door and say, hey, we're a team that we offer social services, whatever you might be struggling with, we're here to help. We don't typically kind of come out with mental health just because people kind of retract back a bit. So we just kind of come at it from a social services angle, and we're just basically there to offer any help we can, and then we start the conversation and just try to develop it towards what's really happening, which is the majority of the time it's mental health issues. But we certainly don't want to just kind of bang on the door and just say, hey, we're here to fix your mental health or treat your mental health. So we work our way to that point in the conversation.
And a lot of time too, what helps is kind of sticking with the facts. So, hey, police have been out here quite a bit because of X, Y, and Z. And our job is to see if we can provide you any resources to help reduce your interaction with law enforcement. And then, building that rapport, they'll say, yeah, I get mental health medications or counseling. And we kind of build off of that. And we'll have families sometimes follow up with us as well. And just kind of doing like a team effort. But it's I'd say like 95% of the time, people are like, oh my gosh, I didn't know you guys existed. And yeah, like I've been trying to get that guy today that we dealt with, 5 months, he's been trying to get into detox. And within an hour, we were able to get him up there. So we've had really great responses.
I appreciate it. As a son of someone who was Baker acted, I really thank you for what y'all are doing. And when this goes down, I'd love to sit down with y'all and talk some more about what y'all do and what we can support.
Yeah, I'd like to extend, if any one of you want to come do a ride along with us and see firsthand how it operates, absolutely, you're more than welcome to. I
appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime.
Thank you.
I had another question, Mayor.
Sure.
I don't know, Alvin, if this is outside of your scope of responsibility, but can you speak at all to the current status of the critical intervention training and de-escalation training that the police department, would you say that most police officers have been exposed to that at this point?
Yeah, so here in Pinellas County, I think as a whole, but here at this agency as well, we have a very strong CIT presence. I want to say we're like 85% trained. There aren't many officers that don't have the CIT training, and it really is one of the most valuable trainings that an officer will receive. I need to find out what the percentage of calls that we're responding to these days are mental health related, but it seems like it is pretty much the majority, and the CIT training really is a valuable tool. I know that with the corona, I think this last class got delayed or canceled because of the whole COVID thing, like everything else is. But like I said, here at this agency, I want to say we're about 85 to 90% trained. There's very few officers that don't have that training, and I can assure you the majority of them are either brand new that just haven't got in there, or they're not at the patrol level, or that they're interacting with the community so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I had a question. I'm not sure if you guys would be the best to answer this, but my question is, what's the city outside of Officer Soto, outside of your time, and what's the city's investment in this? Like, how much does this program cost? And the reason I ask that is because your voicemail is full. So I'd like to kind of know what the cost would be to expand this program and possibly increase it.
So right now, our position, this team is grant funded. It's grant funded through the CDBG grant. It's a 2-year grant, which is coming up here in October. So the funding is a third through Largo PD, a third through directions, and then third through the county. And it's kind of divvied up that way. I don't have the exact numbers. I can pull up the contract here to break down the numbers, but I don't have it off the top of my head right now. I can tell you what, there's more than enough work for just one person in this position. It's we just had one great addition with the homeless outreach liaison now that we have, and they just started last week or two, and they've already been a huge help. Us working together. As you all know, homelessness and mental health typically are kind of related. And so it's just, it feels like having a second hand working with them. So that's been a huge help with us. But yeah, there's more than plenty. There's more work to go around we can handle.
You don't have to worry about finding the numbers. I know where they are, so I'll find them myself.
Okay.
But I certainly appreciate the work that you do, and I'm very, it's kind of inspirational to see how passionate you guys are helping people and really solving a problem for many, many years. I think we just kind of put out fires, and this helps solve a problem for people. And when you look at the number, the 20 top users of EMS and police, and many of those are mental health issues. And if you're able to get that person in a better place, that they're not in need of our services so often, it's money well spent, and it's compassionate and the right thing to do. So thank you for all your work on this.
Hey, Mayor, I've got a quick question.
Commissioner Robinson.
Thank you. You guys had mentioned, I believe the last slide there was some contact information for you, and you also mentioned a website. Is that website connected to the city's or the PD's website?
It is. It's right through the City of Largo, the police department. If you go to community services, there's a community policing, senior services, and mental health kind of tab on there. And we've linked, our information on there along with resources for anybody who might be looking.
That's great. Thank you. And I just wanted to also say, to kind of echo a lot of the comments that were made by the commission. The city of Largo and you guys in particular are really ahead of the game in a lot of ways. And you see a lot of the problems that are happening throughout the country and currently are related to issues that you guys are solving ahead of so thank you very much. I appreciate everything you guys are doing. It's really great for the city and our area.
Well, thank you. And I have to say, this agency, there's other mental health teams popping up. The sheriff's office has one. I think Clearwater may be in the works to bring one back. Hillsborough, Pasco. The flexibility and the support and the latitude that this police department has allowed us to do what we need to do to get the help that's needed. It's just really made the biggest difference. We're really supported by our chief and deputy chief, and I've seen some of the way the other agencies operate, and they don't have the latitude and the flexibility of doing the things that we've been doing. And I don't know, it's one of the best things to actually see someone's life transform and just with a little bit of an intervention, and it really is. It's very powerful. And like I said, I welcome any of you to come right along, and you'll see it firsthand.
Yeah, I'll take you up on that soon.
Okay.
Mayor, I just wanted to
shotgun.
I got a van. We can load half.
We can load the whole crew up.
You guys will have somebody riding with you every night now. I just wanted to extend also my gratitude to both Tiana and Officer Soto for doing an amazing job. It's I've always said, that you have to be a special person to be a police officer, firefighters, and a lot of other things. But this really, what you guys are doing is above and beyond the spectrum. And I just wanted to let you know that I appreciate you. The whole city, I'm sure, appreciates what you guys are doing and helping a lot of people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us here tonight, and certainly appreciate everything you guys do.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll be seeing you soon. I'm sure.
Sounds good.
Next up, we're going to go to board or committee reports. Does anybody have a committee report to share this evening? Commissioner Carroll. You're on mute. You're still muted.
Oh, your lucky day.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know if you want to change that. I can continue to give these reports on the Suncoast League, but I think I misspoke earlier, Jamie. I called you the second vice president when you're the first vice president of the Suncoast League. But I don't know if you want to take that or not. I certainly don't mind reporting on it. We just held our virtual planning retreat on Saturday, and hopefully you'll see some of that coming, in written form in not too distant future. But that's all I have.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Smith.
And just from Board Pinellas, from what Whit said, we talked about prioritization of programs, and also the Safer Streets Pinellas online campaign that the city posted on Facebook. They're doing challenge yourself about public safety and roads. Also, Fort Pinellas and Henry, this is something the city might want to look at too, what Fort Pinellas is doing. And I'll have Gloria send this all to the commissioners, but they're doing a Fort Pinellas equity assessment, and it looks really in depth. And maybe Whit can give us some suggestions that the city can offer when staff comes back to talk about our inclusion and diversity. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other committee reports?
Yes.
Commissioner
For
Holt.
the continuum of care, I just want to let everybody know that at the end of last year, we had gone to every 3 months or every 4 months for our meetings. But since COVID and the amount of homelessness being on the rise from people not being able to get into shelters, we are meeting every first Friday of the month now. So, and it is a Zoom meeting. I'm not sure if I know you can come on to the as a panelist or as a they're taking questions if anybody has questions. Also, that Pinellas County has extended $30 million for nonprofits. If people want to look into that, nonprofit organizations that are looking for help. And I think that's it. They are having, we also have open membership now. If you go to the Continuum of Care website or Homeless Leadership Alliance, they do have open membership now for people to actually join and be part of the Continuum of Care committee. So that is open now, and there's like a membership fee, and so outside of elected officials and organizations, you can be part of Continuum of Care. And that's it.
Thank you. And moving on to items from the commission. Commissioner Carroll, do you have anything today?
Just an observation as the pandemic continues and we have national debates about a variety of things, looking for a silver lining in those things. It's interesting to me that we seem to be hearing more and more support for home rule. Nobody wants to really take responsibility for bad things that happen. So it's up to the local mayor and commission or the local police chief. So I see that as a strong argument for home rule. That's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith.
Just in support of Parks Month, my background is McGow Park, the boardwalk that goes out. And so if you have the opportunity to go out to McGow and support them, they were hit really hard with the virus, and they're looking for donations. So if you can go out to the McGow and help them out, and any financial assistance would be deeply appreciated. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Robinson.
Yeah, I don't have anything tonight. Thank you.
Commissioner Holmes.
It's still 90 degrees in the shade.
Thanks for the update. Vice Mayor Hulk.
I have nothing this evening. Thank you.
Commissioner Finger.
I have nothing this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have anything this evening either. And Mr. Schubert.
I don't have anything either.
Very good. Do we have any action items?
I heard none.
Very good. Well, you all have a nice evening, and we'll see you next week.
Dinner time.
Meeting is adjourned.